Welcome to the 24 Hours of PaaS Summit Preview 2016. We are excited you can join us today for Eduardo Castro's session, R, Language for the SQL Server DBA. This 24 Hours of PaaS event consists of 24 consecutive live webinars delivered by expert speakers from the PaaS community. The sessions will be recorded and posted online after the event. To access any on-demand sessions, please visit www.24hoursofpass.com for session links. My name is Jose Rolando Y. Paz, and I have a few introductory slides before I head over the presentation to Eduardo. If you require technical assistance, please type your question into the question pane located on the right side of your screen and someone will assist you. This question pane is also where you may ask questions throughout your presentation. Feel free to enter your questions anytime, and once we get to the QA portion of the session, I'll read your questions out loud to the speaker. You are also able to zoom in on the presentation content by using the zoom button located at the top of the presentation window. Please note that there will be a short evaluation at the end of your session. Your feedback is very important to us, so please take a moment to complete it. It will appear in your web browser. I'd like to take a moment to thank our presenting sponsors, Microsoft, Idera, and Attunity. In addition, I'd also like to thank the supporting sponsors for this event, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and SQL Century. The staging of 24 Hours of PaaS would not be possible without their generous support, and they are the reason this event is available free of charge. Make sure you explore everything else PaaS has to offer for data professionals. You can join local user groups around the world, special interested groups, find free online resources through our Learning Center, and read up on the latest community news on the Connector newsletter. Next, I'd like to bring your attention to the upcoming PaaS Summit. Taking place in Seattle, Washington from October 25th to the 28th, PaaS Summit 2016 features over 200 sessions with world-class data experts. It's the perfect place for network with experts and peers, and you can meet the Microsoft engineering team behind SQL Server 2016. You can save $200 on the registration by using the discount code 24HUB200 if you register before Sunday, September 18. You can find more information at www.passsummit.com. I'd like to introduce today the presenter, Eduardo Castro. Eduardo is a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and PaaS Board of Advisor for Latin America, as well as a Latin America SQL Server expert, and focuses on architecture, business intelligence, and data analytics. Eduardo has a specialization in data analysis and big data. And without any further ado, here's Eduardo with our language for the SQL Server DBA.
Thank you everybody for joining us today. In this session we will talk about the R language for the SQL Server DBA, and we will try to explain how R can be used with SQL Server to keep another type of solutions for our business. We have some objectives for these sessions. First, we will start talking about the R language. We will start talking also about the Microsoft data tools that are related with this language. And then we will focus on the SQL Server portion of the R code. For example, we will focus on telling you how to run R code inside the database engine, and how can we move a script that has been already written in R Studio to our SQL Server instance. First, we need to start talking about some topics that are very common today. For example, you will hear a lot of topics that are using by the current trends in the industry. For example, data science and data analytics. First, when we are talking about the R code and when we are talking about R tools, we are relating these tools with this main topic, data science. And the data science is related with machine learning algorithms, is related with statistics, and also is related with the data exploration. And most of the companies right now are leveraging these capabilities of data analysis to keep more solutions to analyze and get information out of data. That's why it's so important to get you to know what is our code and how can we use it in conjunction with other Microsoft tools. For example, the R language is related mostly of the time with the concept of big data. It's also related with data mining, related with machine learning. It's also related with statistics and data wrangling. For example, you can write an R script to do any of these topics, and you can use R script, for example, to write a script to analyze the data, to get information about that data. For example, you can clean the data, you can do forecasting. For example, we are going to run some forecasting algorithms inside our SQL server. But we need to find where is changing right now. What is changing right now? For example, the typical architecture of the BI infrastructure normally includes data sources, for example, relational databases, and with that relational databases, we create solutions. For example, we create the data warehouse, and then we create the cube, and then we get some visualizations application, for example, Power BI. But now it's changing. For example, we have another type of sources. For example, we have big data, we have unstructured data sources, we have internet data sources, we have data sources that are written in JSON, and we have a lot of information that needs to be analyzed. Right now, the tools that are more common to be used by data scientists to analyze the data are those tools that are related with the R language. Because the R language, as we are going to see, is a very powerful tool that we can use to load data, to analyze data, to clean data, and to do some forecasting. And with that information, after that information is clear and that information is analyzed, we can get another solution. For example, we can integrate it with another tools. For example, one of the integration that we can do is, for example, to integrate it with our current BI infrastructure. Where can we include that? For example, we can include the R language in the pipeline. For example, we can include it in the data cleaning phase. We can include it in the data wrangling. The data wrangling is all those steps that you need to do to clean your data, to analyze your data, and to get ready to be used with another tools, for example, to do a forecast or to do data mining. And also we can integrate our R language with Power BI. For example, the latest version of Power BI desktop can run, for example, R scripts, and it can include R visuals. So we have been talking about the R language, but why is R language so useful and why is so popular right now? As you can see in this slide, we have different tools that can be used for data analysis and to to create and treat with data. For example, we have here this survey that says that the R language is one of the most used tools today to analyze data. That's why Microsoft has included the R language in many of the tools that are in the Microsoft stack. For example, here we have some popular tools. Some are Microsoft tools, some are not Microsoft tools. For example, the popular tools that are used for the data analysis includes SAS, SaaS, include MATLAB, include SSPS, includes some no SQL databases, and also includes, for example, data sources. For example, Hadoop, includes Spark, Storm. All these tools all these systems are for the non-SQL systems. And to analyze this data, we have several options. For example, we can use JavaScript, we can use MapReduce, but we can use more high-level language. Between this high-level language, we have Python and we have the R script. So one of the tools that it is going to be included inside the SQL Server 2016 is the R scripts. Here we have another tools that also are used to analyze data. For example, if you are going to use, for example, Hadoop, and you want to run it inside Azure, you will use HD Insight. This gives you the opportunity to run Hadoop in the cloud as a service. Also, you can run inside these clusters, you can run R scripts. And you have the ability to run HD Insight using a Linux machine or using a Microsoft Windows machine. Also, we have another tools by Microsoft to analyze data. For example, we have Azure Streaming Analytics that is based on HD Insight and Hadoop. And we also have another powerful tools that is Power BI. As I mentioned before, Power BI has the ability to include in the latest version R scripts. But we have another tools. We have more tools that are given by Microsoft. We also have the R extensions for Visual Studio. This gives you the opportunity to run R inside Visual Studio. We have with Power BI Desktop in the latest version, we have the ability to integrate R scripts, we have the ability to integrate R graph, and also we have another product from Microsoft that is called the R server. The R server is a tool that was acquired by Microsoft a few months ago, and it gives you the opportunity to have a server to run the R scripts. But I have been talking about R a lot of times during this presentation, but we need to understand what is R. R is a language that is very commonly used by the statistics experts and the data analysis experts, and is one of the tools that is used by the data scientists. So R is an open source software. It has more than 5,000 statistical software packages, but the R language does not have an IDE. For example, if you want to use an IDE to write the R scripts and the R code, you need to use another tool. For example, you can use the R Studio. The R Studio is also open source and is free and is multi-platform. Another tool that you can use to run R scripts is the Microsoft R tools for Visual Studio. the Microsoft R tools for Visual Studio gives you the ability to create R scripts using Visual Studio. So R, as a summary, R is a language. The language is used to create R scripts, and the R scripts are the tools that are used by the data scientists to create and analyze data. First, if you are going to start using R, the first thing that you need to do is to understand where is used this tool. For example, R is very commonly used among the statistics experts and data scientists. If you want to install R, for example, the standard R, you need to go to the internet and download that installer. And for the IDE, you can use RStudio, as I told you before. This is a screenshot of the RStudio. Once RStudio is installed on your machine, you can start writing code. We have some limitations with the open source version of R. As I told you before, R is open source, but it has some limitations. For example, R runs in our notebook. Also, R needs to load all the data in memory. R has only one thread, and if you want to escalate R to do more analysis, you need to create an R cluster, and that is not an easy task. That's why Microsoft has a solution, and the solution is the Microsoft R Server. The Microsoft R Server does not need to load all the data in memory to do the analysis. It can load incrementally the data to the memory to do the analysis and to apply some algorithms. Also, it has the ability to create clusters, and the Microsoft R Server also runs in different platforms. For example, it can run inside Windows, it can run in Linux, for example. The Microsoft R Server was previously known as Revolution Server, and for example, if you are going to look for some documentation, it's very common that you can do a search on the internet, and you can search for Revolution Server, and then you will find some documentation, you will find some examples of how to use it, and then you can use that information using the same information that was valid for Revolution Server is valid for the Microsoft R Server. We have two versions of the Microsoft R Server. The Microsoft R Open, for example, this is the free version of the Microsoft R Server, and we have the Microsoft R Enterprise. The Microsoft R Enterprise has more abilities. For example, it's easier to create a cluster, it's easier to use the ability, for example, to create and use advanced functions. For example, there are some libraries in R that are not as fast as it should be in the open source, and Revolution Analytics has written some advanced analytics libraries to accelerate the analysis and data processing. And then we have C, that R is a very common language. And then we have R integrated inside SQL Server 2016. For example, this gives you the ability to have your database, and inside your database you will have the ability to run the R language. The R language will be included in the form of our store procedure, and that store procedure will have access to the data stored in SQL Server, and then you can use this script or this script language to analyze the data inside your database, and your output can be also stored inside SQL Server. So we have here two roles that are going to be used, or two roles that are going to be involved in an R project with SQL Server. For example, we have the database administrator, the one who is responsible of administering SQL Server. Then we will have two other roles. We will have the data scientists who are able to interact directly with the data, and we will have the data developers who are going to use the RStudio, or the data scientist is going to use the RStudio to create scripts. And those scripts are going to be given to the database administrator, and the database administrator will decide if this algorithm can be run inside SQL Server. For example, the data scientist will give you the script and you will include that script inside SQL Server. Or you can ask a data developer to convert the script written by the data scientist to a stored procedure inside SQL Server. And what can we do with this? For example, we can use the R language to create solution for fraud detection. We can use the R language to create solution for sales forecast, or for example, for do some predictions. We can also use the R language inside another tool from Microsoft that is called the Azure Machine Learning, who also supports the R language and Python. But how do you integrate R inside SQL Server? For example, if you are going to install and you are going to use the R script inside SQL Server, you need to start by installing the R support inside your SQL Server instance. The first option that you will have is to install some feature that is called the R services. The R services gives you the opportunity to run R scripts inside the database. This is also known as Advanced Analytics Extensions. These Advanced Analytics Extensions gives you the ability to include R scripts inside standard Transact SQL statements. During the installation, you also have the options to install the Microsoft R server. This is the standalone server. Remember, we have two versions. The Microsoft R services, who gives you the ability to include R scripts with Transact SQL, and we also have the ability to install the Microsoft R server standalone. This is also known as the Microsoft R server for Windows. Once you have installed this, you need to check that everything has been installed correctly. Everything should be green. But you need to do some extra integration, or you need to do some extra steps to allow the integration of SQL Server with the R language. For example, the first step you need to do is to run this statement, enable external scripts, and then you need to restart your server. This other statement, this command that is called register R extensions. This step is only required if you are using the CTP version of SQL Server 2016. In the RTM version, you don't need to run the second statement. It's only needed the first statement. After you have enabled the R integration with SQL Server 2016, you need to create some users inside the database and give those users access to the tables, and this user is going to be used inside the R scripts to connect to the different tables inside your database. This is another statement to create a login, and then we are going to move to our first demo. This is our first demo. We are going to install support for R scripts inside SQL Server. You start your installation. You said you want to install a normal SQL Server instance. You select this. Okay. The installation of the critical updates is optional for this demo, but for a production server, you should include that updates. Here we have our main screen. Here you have two options. If you want to install only the R services, for example, that gives you the ability to include R statements inside the SQL Server, you check this option. And if you want to install the R server for Windows, for example, as you can see, I can install only the R server. If you choose only this option, you will install the Microsoft R server for Windows. I'm clarifying this because previously we have a separate installer to install the Microsoft R server for Windows. But when SQL Server 2016 was released, the installer of Microsoft R server for Windows was included inside the standard SQL Server setup. In this example, we are going to choose both options. If you choose both options, in the next screen, you need to select the database instance. Once you have selected your database instance, there's another extra step. We are going to use and to add the current user. Up to now, this is the same installation that we have been doing for several years, but here we have the difference. For example, we need to accept that we need to install the Microsoft R Open, and we need to accept the license type. We'll keep accept. Okay, we need to wait a little bit. We hit next, and then the installation will start. In this step, the database engine will be installed. Also, we will install the Microsoft R services, and we will install the Microsoft R Open. Okay, we will let that install and wait for a little bit. Then I need to introduce some tools that are needed for write R scripts. The first tool, as I mentioned before, is the R Studio. For example, if you download the R Studio and install the R Studio, you will be presented with this type of interface. As you can see, with the R Studio, you can start writing your R scripts. Here I have a sample script written in R. This script, a database administrator, the only thing that he needs to know about R is that now you are going to be able to use this type of script inside your database. A database administrator does not need to know how to write an R script, but he needs to know how to identify an R script. For example, here we have an R script. We are loading some data from the R data set that is very common. We are assigning a variable. Then we are applying an algorithm to use some analysis in this data set. and then we are using a prediction function. This script is a very common script. For example, if you look for any R course or any R documentation, you will find this script. That's why I am including this script here, because it's a very common script. If you want to run a script, you select all the script and you click run. Here we have run this script, and this is analyzing some data, applying some forecasting technique, and it gives you some predictions. Also, we have a graph. Here we can see the prediction. Okay. The role that writes this script is the data scientist, or maybe the developer that knows about data science. Now we need to integrate this script inside SQL Server. Okay, the first step was to install the R support inside your SQL Server instance. For example, we install the R services, and then we install the Microsoft R Open Server also. After you install your server support, you need to run some scripts to give and enable the R scripts inside SQL Server. Here I have the required scripts to enable your SQL Server instance with the R. For example, the first step was to install the support for R, but by default this support is not enabled. The first step that you need to know is that you need to run the allowed external scripts using the XP configure. Then you need to restart the Microsoft SQL Server. Also, I'm going to check here in the Microsoft SQL Server 2016 Configuration Manager. We have the normal SQL Server services. For example, after you run this script, you need to come here and restart the SQL Server. And also, you need to check that this service is running. This is the SQL Server Launchpad. It's a new service that is enabled when you install the Microsoft R services and is used by the Microsoft R services. For example, if I double click here, and I check Advanced, you can see that we have this configuration. This configuration gives you the ability to configure how many users are going to be able to connect to this SQL Server to run R scripts. For example, this is another feature that I haven't mentioned before. You have the ability to run R scripts inside SQL Server, inside an store procedure, and you also have the ability to let the data analysis or the data scientist to use RStudio or Microsoft R extensions for Visual Studio and use some extensions to connect to SQL Server and then run scripts inside SQL Server. And this number, what it tells you is the maximum allowed users that are going to be allowed inside this instance to run R scripts. If you change it, you can do it here. Also, when you install the R scripts, you can check that the R services are installed properly. You can come here and check that you have some special group. This special group is this one, the SQL R user group. This group has some members. These accounts were created during the installation of the SQL Server instance. These users are created here locally, and when an external user is connecting to this SQL Server instance and he wants to run a SQL script, that user is mapped to this account, and this account has the rights inside the database to run the R script. But We can do it here. After you install this, you will see that you have the services enabled, that you have the mapped users, and then after that you can start using the R code inside your SQL Server. How do you run the R code inside SQL Server? First, you need to use this statement. We are going to run an external script. You need to specify that the language that you are running is the R language, and inside here, inside this variable, inside the script variable, you will put all your script, all your R script. Also, inside your R script, you can use data sets. How do you get to use data sets? For example, you use another variable. For example, you use this parameter, input data. And the input data can be a transact SQL. This transact SQL can be data inside your SQL Server database. And inside your R script, you will use your input data set. Also, this store procedure has the ability to give you results. For example, if you run your database scripts and your database script in R script is returning some data, then you can get that information using a result set. For example, if we run here this script is launching the R engine inside SQL Server, is taking some input data, going to the R code, and then is returning data. In this example, we are using and returning only one number. If you can run this very basic statement, then your installation of SQL Server is good. And you can run external scripts inside your database. There is also another extra step that you need to know as a database administrator. Sometimes your R script developer is going to use libraries. Libraries are those special objects or external libraries that that some developer is able to use inside an R script, and normally those libraries, you will have two types. The libraries that are already installed with R, and you have external libraries as I called it. Those libraries are libraries that are available in an external repository, and then if a developer is using an external library, you need to install this library inside the SQL Server instance. So you can use that library inside the script, and that script will run properly. For example, if you need to add another library inside SQL Server, for example, you find out that your developer is using this library, what you need to do? You need to come here, look for the installation of SQL Server, look in the instance, then you will have the R services. I'm going to get back. You will have the R services folder. Then you go to bin, the 64 version, and then you have two options. You can run directly R. This will be the R console. As you can see, it's the Microsoft R server. Or you can use the R graphical interface. If you need to install an R library that is going to be used in a script that is going to run inside SQL Server, you need to install the package. For example, you can install this package. Let's install .packages. I missed one S. And this, by default, connects to the R repository. And if there's a library that is not compatible with your R version, it will give you this message. Then you can choose to run an R script inside SQL Server. I'm going to select this script, and I run the script. I get the output, the forecast. This is the same script that I ran before. And how do I run this script inside SQL Server? Okay, it's very easy. You just copy paste that script, and then you can use it here. For example, I use the same store procedure, execute external script. I say that the language is R, and then here is the magic. Here you include your R code. If you can see, this is the same code that I am using in the R Studio. You take this code and paste it inside the script part of your execution. For example, if I take this and I run this store procedure, I get the same output. As you can see, this is the forecast, and here I am getting the same forecast. Okay, what is going on here? We are using the R, we are loading the script, and the script is using an output data frame. Here is the output data frame. Here is the data frame that is going to use to get the output of the R script that you executed inside SQL Server. Then, with this parameter, you says what is the name of the R script, and then you read that information using this statement, the result sets, and you said also what types of data you are returning. In this time, we are returning float data variables. As you can see, it's very straightforward to configure SQL Server to run R scripts. And the first step that you need to do is install the R services. You need to install the Microsoft R services inside your SQL Server instance. You need to install the libraries. If your developer is using a special library from R, you need to install the package using the R GUI. And also, the first step that you need to do as a database administrator, if this script is given to you, okay, you open that script and run it inside R Studio just to check that the script is well written. For example, if there's any syntax error here, that instance error will propagate to your SQL Server. And if that R script has some error, it will display an error inside your Management Studio. Here I am doing an error. I am provoking an error. I am taking the same script and I execute the script. As you can see, you get an error. And you get the information that some external script has an error during execution. That's why I say to you that it's better that you check that the scripts that are given to you are already been tested and those scripts are running okay. Because inside SQL Server, what you will get is this error. If you correct the script again, okay, we fix the error, and we can write and run the script again. So you need to be sure that your scripts are well written. We're going back to our presentation. For example, remember you will need the RStudio to check if that your scripts are well written, or you need to be sure that the scripts that are given to you to be included inside SQL Server are already being checked, are already being tested. Here is a screenshot of the same script that I just run inside SQL Server. If you need to check that your script is okay, as I tell you, okay, you can take this, select all that script and click run. If there is any data frame that is used by the developer, for example, on the output that I told you, that data frame will be shown here. Here you see all the data sets that are used by the script. For example, here I have some previously data sets that I was using. Here we have the output data sets. Do you remember this name? This is the output data sets. I can see here a browser of the output data set that is being generated by the R script. This same output is the output that we get inside our SQL Server. That data frame is the output that we are getting from our R script. As you remember, you can include the R language inside your R database, and that script is going to be given to you by a data scientist or by a data developer. And then you include that script inside an stored procedure inside SQL Server, or maybe the another flow is a data scientist writes the R script, then the data scientist gives that script to the data developer writes the stored procedure, and then the developer gives you the stored procedure to be included inside a database in SQL Server. If you detect that the code that is given to you has this syntax, or for example, has the R language, the R as the language, you need to be sure that your database instance has the R services installed, and then you need to check that all the libraries required by this script are installed inside your database instance. As you have seen before, we run some scripts inside our SQL Server. In summary, there are new requirements for the SQL Server database administrators. For example, these requirements will come from the data science area. The data science will write scripts to analyze data. Then sometimes you will be given the requirement to include those scripts inside SQL Server, because running R scripts inside SQL Server has some advantages. For example, as you can see, all the data is inside SQL Server, and we can select data from SQL Server tables to be transformed to data frames and data sets inside the R script, and then we can run some forecasting techniques, some prediction techniques, some data cleaning techniques, some data science techniques to get information, and then that information can be stored back inside our SQL Server. And SQL Server 2016 gives you the ability to include R scripts inside the database engine in an integrated way. With this, we go to the questions. If there's any questions, we will be happy to clarify any question that you have right now. Okay, all the questions that you have, we will collect that questions. We have a quite few of questions, and we are running out of time. We will take those questions offline, and we will answer that questions, and then the answer will be included in the 24 hours of past website.
Hi,
Summit
hi
preview.
Eduardo. Sorry, it's Angie here. I just Jose just had problem with his
Okay.
audio, so I actually can probably ask you a quick question.
Okay, great.
Let me just pull up what we've got. What should I watch for in terms of performance impact on the server when running it? Also, what are the security-related implications when enabling it?
Okay, the performance implication. Remember that here we are running the R engine inside SQL Server. And then the R uses a lot of CPU's power. For example, if I run some forecasting algorithm, this forecasting algorithm is going to be a lot of computations, and then it will affect a little bit the performance of the SQL Server because we are using more CPU. Also, about security. For example, if you are going to use and select data from your R scripts, and that R script is run inside an stored procedure, all the security from SQL Server standard, or all the standard security from SQL Server applies to the R script. For example, if I do a select, the context where the stored procedure is run must have the rights inside the database to access the data. But if we are using an R client, for example, RStudio or Visual Studio data tools for R, then you will need to create a user that is going to be used in the R script to connect to the data. So it's better if you run your R scripts inside and store procedure because all the data is already there inside SQL Server, and the security from SQL Server applies to that store procedure. Also, if about security, you need to give the proper users the ability to run R scripts inside SQL Server. Is there another question?
Sure. I'll throw one more at you, and then anything else I can email to you, and you can answer them with a blog or
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay.
So let's give you another one. Is our server enterprise licensed as part of SQLS enterprise version?
Okay. About licensing, right now, the R services are included in the enterprise version of SQL Server.
All right, that was an easy one. Just jumping in, sorry. What kind of security risk is it to enable external scripts?
Okay. This is the same discussion as I think running Visual Studio.NET code inside SQL Server and all the security breach is the same, because the only option that we have right now inside SQL Server 2016 to enable the R scripts is to enable that option. Yeah. There's no other options. For example, if you want to run R scripts, you need to enable the execution of external scripts, and you will need to give extra security to your server. For example, you need to do some hardening to your server, for example, that not everybody has access to the database engine, for example, because you will have to enable the execution of external scripts, because the R engine, it's, for example, being called by SQL Server to execute the R scripts. If you saw during my demo, if I need to install an R package, I don't do it inside our store procedure. I do it inside the R GUI to affect the R installation that we have inside the SQL Server machine. So you need to be careful about what people you give permissions to access your server.
Okay, great. So we're actually out of time. I'll be sure to get those questions to you. If you want to flip to the next slide.
Okay.
So be sure to join us for coming up next, the Synergy of In-Memory Operational Analytics with Rob Farley. I can tell you from experience, this is going to be a pretty cool session, so please join us. Next slide. Thank you all for attending. Please follow us at Past24Hop. And thank you, Eduardo and Jose.
Thank you.